Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to the Swartz Center for Entrepreneurship today. We're really happy to welcome Helen Hanna Casey to the UBS Family Business Speaker Series. This is done in partnership with the Tepper School of Business and run by the wonderful Meredith Meyer-Gorelli, who you'll get to meet today. I am honored to introduce Greg Merrill, who is from UBS and the Chance Mantion Group, that is the sponsor for our Family Business Speaker Series. So without further ado, Greg.
Well, thank you, everyone. As always, this is the, third one this year, Meredith, third one this year. And I've learned what I say is less and less important, especially as impressive as the speakers are here today, like Helen. So I will not spend a lot of time, but just from breakfast this morning and the separate group earlier, I think it's very clear. I have a long page of Helen's accomplishments, but we're not going to read them all. Yeah, I think there's 4 key areas of leadership, though, that is very clear. One is real estate. Obviously, I'm going to read a couple of these, but one is obviously Helen's been in the real estate industry leader for more than 4 decades, been named most powerful woman in real estate and for the past 10 years, and just keeps going on and on and on about real estate. So that's clear. Everyone here knows that about Howard Hanna Real Estate Services and everything that they've accomplished over the decades. The next is leadership in women-ran businesses. I think you shared the story today at breakfast and here, how you and your sister were named the top women business owners by Working Women's Magazine and were invited to the White House for that. So that was pretty special and resonated well with me there. I think third, and what I love about Pittsburgh, and I grew up in Michigan, and so a city like Detroit, similar, is the passion for the community and how you want to be involved and make a difference in the community. So the list goes on with the philanthropic efforts that the boards you support and causes like Carnegie Mellon and other universities. So I think that really highlights, and the fact you're here today with your time says a lot. Then finally, family. I mean, I think you shared an integrated family in your story so many times today, on the personal front, but also the business front, and the fact that 3 generations are within the family is a feat in itself. So those were 4 areas of leadership that were very clear to me, and I'm probably not even do it justice on here. So that said, I think I don't want to take away any more time from the conversation, as I know there's going to cover a lot of good points that are much more insightful than what I'm going to share. So I'm just going to turn it over to Meredith, who, as Dave said, leads the Family Business Initiative and makes all this happen. So that said, I'm going to get out of the way and let everyone talk. So thank you, everyone.
Here we go. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you all. Thanks for being here with us today. Quick check on the mic. You good?
I'm on.
All right, great. We are incredibly lucky to have this phenomenal leader of real estate with us today. Helen Hanna Casey is coming off of 5 weeks of travel, but made it here to be with us today. So we're very grateful for you spending the day with us. I'm going to kick off with a question about your collaborative spirit when it comes to family business. So over those 4 decades that Greg mentioned, you've maintained a joint vision and a collaborative spirit with your siblings as you've built this incredible company. So how, Helen, have you balanced family dynamics with business strategy to foster this partnership between family members?
Well, first I should explain that somebody's, trying to make me look younger, because it's a lot longer than that. Our business started in 1957, so that's, how many years is that? 64 years, 65 years, close. And my father's office was only 2 blocks from my house. So I was raised, if you look through here, you go over here, that way directly, 2 blocks over. So there's Fifth, there's Ellsworth, and then there's Baird. I was raised in the middle of Baird Street. There's 2 white houses. My cousins were raised next door. My mother's family had a funeral home, which we still have in the family, which is 120 years old now, and is that was 2 blocks one way, and my father's office was 2 blocks the other way. So I had been in the business that long because it was part of our life. And so I learned how to manage a family based on what I saw my mother's family doing as well. To me, probably the biggest thing is because we grew up with this at our table. And if you're in a family business or you're entrepreneurs, it becomes your life. There's no question about it. And so how do you balance that? And so it was not discussed at the dinner table. And it still shouldn't be discussed at the dinner table, by the way, because it breaks things up. But to me, the big thing is collaboration is nothing unless you trust each other. And so you really have to trust the people you work with. And if you don't trust them, then you can't work together. Look, in my family, we're all salespeople. I like to tell the story that my husband and I, when we were dating, and I will also say my husband is I call him a half tartan because he's a half-century tartan. He doesn't get to be a tartan until 100 years after he graduates. So, and we were raised in very similar backgrounds, 3 kids in our houses. Education was important, conversation was important. Really, we were treated much as adults from growing up, which is great. But he didn't learn how to perform on stage as a small child, and he says that we did. But we're all salespeople. And if you're a salesperson, you have to be constantly selling. So to collaborate with people, you can't vote, okay? You can get mad, you can yell and scream sometimes, but you have to trust that the other person, you believe in what they are saying. And if you don't trust that every day of your business, then it's difficult to go ahead. Fortunately, I have a brother and sister, we're all 2 years apart. My parents trusted us. My parents had great trust in us, in our ability to move the company forward at a very young age. We had trust in each other that what we were deciding together with our parents was the right thing to decide. My parents had trust enough in us that they refinanced their house to keep building the business. All right? We had trust enough in them to think that them giving us the ability to move forward really gave us a very special advantage over anybody else, that we had actual say. So I think that's probably the most important thing, is that you trust each other, you believe in each other, and that you are committed to the same goals.
And I think that trust is such a special dynamic in family business and can be such a point of differentiation. But we have a number of Howard Hanna leaders in the audience here who are non-family members, and you have so successfully grown the company to include non-family leaders as well. Would you speak to how you've done that?
Well, I'd also like to just point out that the women leaders took the front seats here. Okay, the male leaders went to the side. Gwen got pushed over there, I guess, because there weren't enough seats. But you cannot grow with just your family or your founders. I mean, there's no way to do that. You can't say we're going to have growth. You can't say that you're going to take the next step without experts in those steps. And so we have been fortunate enough with people who have chosen to join us, either because some through acquisition. I mean, a senior vice president, I can see out of the corner of my eye, we acquired his firm 2 years ago. Other people came to us for the opportunity to move into management. Other people started with us. Some people started as agents with us. They started as an agent one day and they just kept growing up. Others have moved from out of town. And smart entrepreneurs have the ability to choose the right people for the right job at the right time. I mean, Leah Gibbons, who's our CMO in front of us, I think she's had 7 jobs. Right? She has a myriad of different talents. She's also an attorney, but that's really not it. She is able to take a situation and move with it. So she has been nimble at that. Chris Burdick, who beside her is president of brokerage for all 14 states. All right, she's a problem solver also, but she's great at organization. That's not the best strength, by the way, of most of the Hannas. We are not as good at organization as we are at selling. So, but if you look through, we have been able to find people that move us to the next level along with us with those same goals, while at the same time allowing family people in the business to move into the business and succeed.
Right. people, right place, right time.
Right people, right place, right time. And it does not mean, by the way, because you've been with us 25 or 30 years or because you're a member of the family, that you're the right person for the job. You're the right person for the job at the right time, or you create your job. Right? So we have managers that have grown themselves to be, so much bigger. Bill Russo, who's over there, started with us as an agent also and became a manager, but the region grew. So it's not the same job. His manager's job wasn't the same job when he moved from one place to another. His regional job changed because of how we grew, how we developed, and how he led his team.
Mm-hmm. So I want to switch gears because we've got a lot of ground to cover and we want to leave plenty of time for questions from you all.
And this is pretty comfortable here. You can sit here
all
day.
day.
Come in here and just sit here in these chairs all day.
They've got it so good.
Oh, God.
So good. They pay a lot in tuition, though, I will tell you. Okay, so I actually want to go to something you talked about with our smaller group. Helen was so kind and spent an hour with our Tepper Real Estate Club and some other real estate entrepreneurs from our community earlier. And something you said struck me. You said, we have to return to being a country of homeowners. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Well, the United States has always led the world in home ownership by tradition, by dream. You go back, if you read Richard Florida's book on suburbia, it talks about how they came here because they couldn't own land. People came here from Europe because they couldn't own land in their own country. And here they could own land, and how important that is to what we are. And you saw certainly the year 2000s, where you saw this huge growth of people buying that weren't prepared to buy in many cases, which caused the mortgage issues, which caused the whole debacle that happened. You saw this turn, a turn towards rental. Some because people were forced into rentals, some because banks were not lending to developers to build the product that we wanted. And somebody who today in class told me we're 2 million units short. I didn't know it was that high. So we're lacking in 2 million properties to be available for people today. So what's happened is between that recession, between bank regulations that have become stringent for developers, between big companies buying blocks of housing, we have shifted away from 69% home ownership down to 61% home ownership. Wow. That's pretty frightening when you think about it. And we talked about it in the 70s. This whole new business was developed called relocation, because companies really started moving people around. Because they needed to work in the place where the operations were that they were. Pittsburgh was this huge corporate headquarters, and so as a result, relocation was an important part of the business. And they wanted you here, and they wanted you to own their house, because they wanted you to be involved in your community, because then you would stay with the company. That's also changed. In many of your jobs, you can live anywhere. Right? Or you say you're going to stay there and you'll commute to the job. So that has changed. So that's a big chunk of America is no longer homeowners, 8%. And we talk about affordability issues, but the bigger issue than affordability is availability. The 2 million units that are lacking of properties in tremendous range of price ranges. Yes, affordable, though nobody seems to have a definition of affordable because it's different everywhere. Affordable housing, but it goes all the way up to, I can get into my subject on the baby boomers if you want me to. Go. My forgotten generation. I'm tired of hearing about you millennials. Millennials want everything, right? Well, there were just as many baby boomers as there were millennials 5 years ago. 75 million of each of us. Now, if you look at that, we have not built housing for baby boomers. We don't have special mortgage programs for baby boomers, do we, guys? Nope, not one. We have lots for first-time buyers. We have people in medicine. We have them for entrepreneurs. We have them for self-employed. We have them for everything in the world. But we don't have anything for baby boomers, specifically those people who are 60 to 77 years old. And they are the people that are not moving. And traditionally, they were moving. If you go back to that year 2000, you saw people at 56, 55 starting to move. They were moving bigger in many cases. They were raising their kids and then moving bigger. They were moving smaller. They were what we call right-sizing for their lifestyle. And we don't have enough right-sizing product today. I was talking to the dean earlier. She's really amazing, very impressive woman. And she was saying when they came, they looked at condos and houses, and they were a Howard Hanna client, thank you. And she said, but the condo selection was terrible. It was almost, if you want a condo, you have to go into a rental. That's the issue with banks, right? Banks don't want to fund condos. So we went from condos of all different levels having to be pre-sold at 30% in 2004-05 to 50% to 70%. It's almost an impossibility. You know? Even in cities like New York, there's so many unsold condos in new buildings in New York. So they don't want to fund them, and you can see why, but they do want to fund rentals because there is a market for rentals, because it's short-term turnover, because you don't have to rely on the same need of equity, the same need of qualifying, et cetera. So that's the group that we need to get moved in this country to free up the housing that does exist, because there's great housing exists in every price range. We discussed Bloomfield today, how many older people are in Bloomfield that haven't moved, but that's true in every market in the country. It's not just true here in all 14 states we're in. I can walk into any room and I'll hear the same thing: is we need baby boomers to move. Yep. So housing is down. Values are up, prices are up, but the sales of units are down.
So speaking of transactions, a recent ruling by a federal court in Missouri is challenging the current structure of residential real estate transactions. In the class action suit, the federal jury ruled that the National Association of Realtors and several unlucky brokerages, perhaps, had conspired to fix prices by setting a standard where sellers pay the listing agent a commission, which of course is then split with the buyer's agent. The decision seems like it could have a potential impact. This is a $1.8 billion decision, could grow to a $5 billion decision, to unstructure or change the structure of how residential real estate is bought and sold. What is your perspective on this? How will this impact your business, if at all?
Well, it's going to impact our business a lot of ways, because there are many copycat suits from that, by the way. I said earlier today, I was so proud that our name has been dropped out of 2 major suits. The biggest one in the country, which was filed in Indiana, federal court, we were just dropped from, and we were dropped from another one. So, but there are a lot of them, so it's not just that one. I think you have to look at the structure. Right now, our structure is, and has been for many years. In the 1950s, when my father started the business, if you wanted to buy a house, you called the broker with the sign on it, and that's who you bought it from. Then they started multi-lists. There were multi-lists started before that, but the one here in this particular area was started in 1957. And an agent could take you to see any listing that was on the market, which is what all of you want. That's before Zillow, before you could find it on your own. But they wanted you to take them to see what was available in the marketplace. And so that changed the industry. Now, what was agreed was that and this is where they have the argument, is that people agreed to this, that the listing agent would be, or the listing broker would be paid by the seller, and the seller would pay the selling broker their commission. So the seller was paying the whole commission. Now, mind you, even to this day, if you're VA and certain FHA programs also, right, the buyer cannot pay. I have to clarify that. The buyer cannot pay their own commission if they're buying under a VA loan or if they are buying certain FHA programs. So we would eliminate whole cores of buyers to change this, how they could buy or whether they could buy. And most of the young people in this room don't have money saved up for some down payment, right? Even if you're buying under zero down, you don't have the money also saved up to pay an agent. So that would be the argument why the system should stay the way it is. The reverse of that is that we have, since the mid-1990s, have had buyer agency, which means that you, in the state of Pennsylvania, and I'll use that because every state is slightly different, but in the state of Pennsylvania, you have seller's agency, meaning you represent the seller, you have buyer's agency, and you have dual agency, right? We have no other agencies, Gwen. Gwen Bradley's our head of education, so I'm just verifying, in this state, okay? So you should be, under the law, when you start working with an agent and you choose an agent, you should be signing a buyer agency contract with them. That contract should call for them to get paid if they sell you a house. If the seller doesn't pay you, they would have to pay you. Well, what do you think? Nobody wants to sign that. They want the seller to pay it, but the court is ruling that that's not fair. They're also ruling that commissions are preset, which also is not true. I would love it to be true, but it's not, okay? Because we would make a lot more money if it was true. Because, quite honestly, we can't set the commission. It's all over the place. So, yes, there are flaws in the way we do business now. Yes, do all agents explain it properly? No, they don't. Do people know who represents them? Not always. So there are changes that should occur and will occur, but they won't be as drastic, perhaps, as is being predicted.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I'd like to talk a little bit about growth. So your family started this company in a region that hasn't experienced tremendous growth. You mentioned when we were talking earlier that the U.S., will transact somewhere around 600,000 residences this year.
Right now, about 600,000.
Nevertheless, you, your team, your family have continued to grow in this extraordinary way. You've done that in part through developing new enterprises, including mortgage, title, and insurance businesses. How do you think about innovation and new business development? How do you assess their potential impact on your core services? How do you make these decisions around growth?
Well, the decisions are pretty broad. You start with the basic decision of whether you keep an office open or closed in a neighborhood, do you buy a company that is, 3,000 people working for them. So, I mean, there are a wide range of decisions you're making. And in terms of locally, you have to look at where the growth in that market is, what niche markets there are, right? What markets we're not filling. You mentioned that we have what we now call essential services. That's our newest title, by the way. We've had many titles for them through the years. They were core services, they were financial services, but mortgage, title, and insurance are probably the three biggest that we have. Though we can do a survey for you, we can get you landscapers, we can get you painters, we can do almost anything for you need for your house. But those are the three core ones that are so important to us, I think, because today, in a world where everybody wants everything easy, it's buying a house, it's getting your mortgage, it's getting your insurance, the title is closing it. So those are the important core elements to it. So we look at how we can grow those within a market, how we can be more full service, how we can offer our clients more of an ability to help us offset a market that isn't growing as fast as we would like it to. So the population growth is one thing, but it's only one part of it, because the other part of it is what we call market share, which any of you that are entrepreneurs or studying this, it's market share and how you can gain market share and what the value of 1 point of market share is, what the value of 15 points of market share is in whatever business you're trying to develop. So when you look at that, that's really how we determine what we do and what the plan ahead is. When we look at markets to grow into in other places, we look at a number of other things. So we look at opportunities to take our essential services. We look at opportunities of what the market share is there presently, how we think we can grow it. We have recently merged all of our mortgage companies all over the country. They had different names. So we've merged all 7 of them into one mortgage company, which was a huge undertaking. I'm not even sure how we've done it, but you've been able to do that because of the smart minds here at CMU and other places that have developed technology platforms that the technology can reside in one place and be done by the best people in all places, rather than having to have those technologies in each place with people operating them. So we've just completed doing that, which gives us an edge when we open in a new market today. We don't have to start up a mortgage company or revamp an existing mortgage company that isn't as successful as we are. We've been very successful in our core businesses, essential services. So
successful. The insurance, you're the largest residential
insurance company
in the country.
The real estate insurance company.
Yeah.
And people don't even realize that we do all different kinds of insurance. We do everything but life. So, but again, that goes back to the services that you can provide to your client. So whatever program you're developing, whatever company, whatever idea is, how do you take that and how do you expand it to give that same customer that you've worked hard to get, to give them more of what they want today? So it's just like a grocery store. You can have the greatest grocery store in the world, but if you don't have home delivery, you're going to have a problem, right? If you don't allow DoorDash, you're going to have a problem. So I think it's the same thing. How do you better service that client? And that's what we look at. So we started our business by going to circular markets around us. Where were people moving? And that's where we opened. That's the same thing is true today. We look at where people are moving within our markets. We look at our biggest referral markets where we have clients moving back and forth. That means that we probably have mutual corporate clients in those markets that we can continue to service. So that's a big part of the decision. And then the other final thing is people. And people in the end is the most important one. That if we don't have people to operate whatever it is, then we can't get ahead. If we don't have a genius, and all of you people that are in technology are geniuses, and you know it. They didn't laugh at that. I got to laugh at that before when I
didn't sound like a compliment.
Yeah, it didn't. But what is a compliment? You are, but because you all have your own specialties that are so good, and you know that. But if you don't have people, you can't just have a great. Wes Davis is here, and he's our head of technology for the whole company. But he's here today. But if he doesn't have great people that are in Charlotte that believe in him, and we're going to buy that company in Charlotte, we're going to have a problem. All right. So we want people locally that can operate, but also can be part of the big picture. We want the same culture. We want people that believe in the same growth that we believe in, and that are here for the long run.
And that's become part of your acquisition strategy,
it has,
right?
Yeah.
So do you mind talking about that? How
Sure.
you structure it?
Our acquisitions were always based on, we went in and bought a company. Right? And we bought it. It was ours. And we didn't change the name right away always, but it was ours and we bought it. And we found it sometimes a struggle to get those people. My brother would like to say, you pay somebody 30 million, 60 million. The numbers are much bigger now, so I don't like to think about them. But you pay them this money and they go off and buy a much bigger house in Florida, or they buy a boat, and they really don't want to work as hard. Yeah. And they're, in some cases, younger than we are, but they want to get retired and get moving on with their lives, and they're giving us 5 years, but the 5 years may not be at their full strength. And we found this out from investment bankers. When investment bankers want to come in and buy you, or buy us, in this case, how we found out, they would say, well, we want you to buy back 25% of the company. All right? So you can get a second bite of the apple. So we found if we have really bright, aggressive people with these companies, then we have to give them a second bite of the apple also, because we need people to run the operation there. Mm-hmm. And that is part of it does not mean we don't buy 100% today, but because a lot of what we bought, I used New York as an example. In New York, we're the largest broker in the state of New York. Anybody here from New York? Well, even if you were, you wouldn't know it, because we don't sell $40 million properties in New York City. We just sell more properties than anybody else in the state. But when you look at that, we bought the number 1 company in New York, the number 5 company in New York, and that's in upstate. And then we went downstate. In downstate, we did 2 partnerships, and we've done 14 full acquisitions. So we bought 14 small companies to merge into the 2 partnerships that we have. Right. So we're still doing both.
Yeah.
It just depends on where we are. But that has given us great ability to grow. Yeah, because we've had great people join us through them.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go back to your family, if you don't mind. Forward looking, how are you thinking about, how do you approach succession planning? What lessons have you learned from managing transitions across 3 generations of the family?
Well, I said earlier, don't discuss real estate at the dining room table. When my daughter and I do, my granddaughter says, remember, you're not allowed to discuss that. It is so much more than family, but we do have, I have one family here today, my niece, Helen Hanna Casey, who's manager of our office in Lawrenceville, a very trendy place. And she, so she was, we now have another, she has an older cousin who just came into sales. So there are 9 of us now in the business, full-time, actively in the business, which is a lot in a business, but it's a big business. And nobody's doing the same thing, by the way. And nobody except, nobody reports to the senior family member directly, to their parent. That's incredibly important to us, that nobody reports to their parent. So my daughter, who's our chief legal counsel and head of our insurance divisions, reports to my sister, okay? We now have siblings reporting to each other. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but it worked. But how's that working, everybody? Siblings working. But today, they don't report to, I have a nephew who's head of Pennsylvania, but he reports to Chris Burdick. He doesn't report to, his mother or his uncle or to me. So I think that's part of it. The same thing has to be true, by the way, of the people who are non-family members that are quality people. You have to make sure who they're reporting to, that what their relationships are. And we talked about this at breakfast today. How do we get more and more of our people that are in the corporate world today to be entrepreneurs on their own, to feel that entrepreneurial spirit? How do we teach that? How do we give them that? I think we've given that to our senior leadership, but we have to give it to another level down. And so who you report to and how you report to each other is very important to that as you build other people. If all of the people that are here from Howard Hanna today believe that I have the final say, or my brother has the final say, or my sister has the final say, though we joke she does have the final say on a lot of things. But if we were to say that, then we wouldn't get anything accomplished, all right? Because the person they report to, they would doesn't have the ability to say yes, no, whatever. So I think that's important. All right? And I think also having people on that senior level team that really have full authority also speaks to that. So I would say, actually, I told this person's roommate last night that that this person was my other daughter and was the smartest person at Howard Hanna Company, and that's our CFO, Tracy Rossetti, and she is, because you have to have people there that are stopgaps, that say no, that say you shouldn't take that risk, or why wouldn't you take that risk? And she today has some of her people with her that are our future. So I think you really have to rely on people believing in your vision and empowering them to enact it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I do want to leave plenty of time for your questions because I know you all have lots of good questions. So my final question for you. I've learned that your alternative life path would have been perhaps being an actress. And I would love for you to share, you're deeply involved in musical theater and Broadway. Would you please share with everyone what you're up to in that space?
Yeah, my alternative lifestyle, yes, I guess. No, I was pretty sure by the time I was 16 that I always got the character parts, and probably this wasn't the role for me in life. My husband, Steve, who I said is a CMU graduate, is an architect, but they also had lighting and production here, which was an alternative lifestyle for him. So we both had alternative lifestyles that we didn't take. We love theater, all theater. We especially love musical theater, Broadway. CLO, is a group in Pittsburgh, which we've been involved in. It's actually how we started dating. We knew each other, but friends from there introduced us. And we love musicals. And so we started as a little group. We were involved with CLO, very involved in it. We started as a little group, putting an investment fund together, like venture capital for musical theater. And we started from there. And then we did some things separate from that group. And then we did some things with different producers. And so we have today 2 shows on Broadway. The one which should win a Tony is Merrily We Roll Along, if you want to see it. Tickets are very hard to get. I say you have to call us to get them. Call one of us to get them. And Days of Wine and Roses, which is incredible, but is not going to last. And that's actually my daughter's investment that she got me into. So we have invested in about 12 shows now.
Wow.
12 shows. It's not like investing in a technology that goes public, right? It's investing a lot more in hope and in belief, but there's an enjoyment to it. So we really love it. And it's become a whole thing with our family. We were part of the original funders of a musical called American in Paris. And we have been all over the world with that, including to Japan to see it in Japanese, which was unusual, but if you know the show well enough, you can get along with it. It's Gershwin, so you can always hum along. And we just love it. We love New York. We've always wanted to live in New York, so we've gone back to Barefoot in the Park that we have bought a little pied-à-terre in New York so that we can be there more often. But it's part of culture, and that's not just our production of it. It's part of culture. We're involved in the Cultural Trust here. We personally make some donations to all of the major art groups because we think that's important to the life of the city that we're in. Okay. And so we're involved in a lot of other stuff that, but probably our personal passion is theater.
Amazing. Let's give Ms. Casey a round of applause. And then I'm going to ask Ruben, because he's really good at this, to grab the mic up here and put your hand up if you want to kick off the questions, and he'll deliver the mic to you. Thank you.
Now, I have to have
in the
some
back.
questions
Actually,
because
use
somebody
the
had a
mic in the
page
back.
of them earlier, so.
Hi, Helen. My name is Jason. I'm a
Jason.
first-year MBA student at Tepper. With rising interest rates, your company has maintained profitability both for yourself and for the customers. What is your strategy in the future, and what are the strategies that you've implemented in order to do that? Because a lot of brokerages haven't been able to do that.
That's true. A lot of brokerages haven't been able to do that. A lot of it is you got to tighten your belt pretty quickly. Okay, and I will say, when I talked about earlier our mortgage company merging, I think that has been tremendously helpful. I've got 3 guys here: Bill Ryan, LaMarcus Thurman, and Peter Bauer, who are from our mortgage company. But merging those entities has been incredibly helpful. But also developing new tools, and that's what I said I think we really excel at, is trying to find the needs of the consumer and how we meet those needs. So if you were to ask them today, what I said, we have a program for almost everything except baby boomers. So part of the problem is that the rising rates have not caused sales to slow down. The lack of inventory has caused sales to slow down. And as a result, you still have rising prices. It's very unusual. Rising interest rates, rising prices, and at the same time, lack of inventory. All right. So demand is there, but we can't fill it. So, but how do you meet the demand of the individual buyers? So we have great programs for people that do buy downs. We have a program that you can, if the mortgage rates go down, we'll give you money we'll offset your closing costs for you to get a mortgage again when they go down, to help people. We have a cash program where we guarantee your mortgage for you so that you can win the cash offer. So I think we've done those things to create affordability. As I said, we've also merging those companies using better technology. And that's a big bite to do sometimes, to say, oh, we've got this great technology here. Okay, but we can do this if we use this technology to do that. I think it's very helpful. And then we are very people-centric in our business, meaning that we believe that the more people we have, our mortgage originators are in our offices. They don't work all over the place. They only work for Howard Hanna agents. So again, they're feeding us information back on what our clients need. So I think that has helped it. But 7% is not a very high rate, just so you all know this. You just don't realize it. And your parents and grandparents have forgotten it too, that certainly in the 1970s, if you got a 7.5, that was a great rate. And in the 1980s, if you got 13%, that was a great rate. That's how we started our mortgage company, was to start actually pledging to savings and loans to give mortgages at a lower rate when the rates were 18%. So that's how. And that's all of our essential services, is looking for those niches always that you can get into. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Isn't he great at this? That's why I picked him.
What, because he runs faster?
Yeah.
Hi, Helen. Richard Citron. So glad that you came out here today. Thank you. I want to mention that when I bought my first house in 1980, I did have 15% interest rate.
And that was low. Yeah.
Could you talk a little more about the family side of the business? Whether you have family meetings, how often those occur, how you address inculcation of values among younger members as you start to look at generation 4 perhaps joining the business. Can you talk a little more about that family side, and is that in play, or is it pretty much run as a business and everybody kind of adapts to it from there?
No, it's a little more than everybody just adapting to it, I think. Because I said, we're all salespeople. We all very strong personalities, all right? We do not always agree. But I joke, we've never taken a vote on anything except to buy the first stadium box we bought. And my father was in the men's room. My sister and I weren't there for some reason on the executive committee. We run under an executive committee system, and we do have other members of the executive committee besides family, but they might as well be family, as I said, my other daughter, et cetera, Tracy. But it is a challenge as we get bigger, and we're looking at those now. We went through, I'm now the CEO of our holdings company, and my nephew, Hobie Hanna, has become the CEO of Howard Hanna Real Estate, which is all of the actual things we do every day. It's not the real estate we own, it's not the entities we own, but it's, and we look at, do we need outside board members? We were talking about that, Jim, about an outside board. He's on a board for a private family company as an outside board member. And so we look at that. Do we have that growth? We have had consultants come in. We've had our structure for a long time. I mean, everybody that's here at Howard Hanna could have told you pretty much the succession plan. It's not a secret, the succession plan, or has been, about who's going to do what. But as you get bigger and you have in-laws that also have input, all right, now you start to change things. Because more people, more voices. So again, what has to be most important is what the goals and what the culture is. If you can't, within your own family, there's no way we can sell it to 14,000 other people. And I can tell you, we don't sell it to 14,000 other people. I wish we could, but you sell it to the most you can. But within the family, I would say we have this remarkable sensibility of somehow being able to fight things through for 2 hours and have dinner together that night, to sit down at holiday dinners with no disagreements apparent, but it's hard work for anybody to think. And I think that's probably true of any partnerships. The difference is that our partnerships extend to everything in our life. I mentioned that my sister's name was, my niece's name is Helen. So I'll just give you a little something. For 6 generations, no woman descendant of a woman in my family has ever been named anything but Helen or Ann. So let's confuse this now with having too many Helens and Anns that are all disagreeing, all right? And then my great nephew is Howard Hanna the Fourth. So that is the difference between partners, is that you have godparents and siblings and everybody mixed in. So you do. And it's tough for my brother and sister and I, because we don't always agree on what our children are doing. You might agree what all these other wonderful people are doing, but we're not agreeing. Never you, Helen. We always agree with what you're doing, but we might not agree on everything, and we try to discuss it with them. And how do you not carry that back to your own child, or how to? And so, although nobody reports to their parent, that doesn't mean that we don't report back and forth, and that the next generation, by the way, doesn't report back to each other on what we think or what they think about us, all right, and what we're doing. So it's a fine balance, but it has worked for us. Mm-hmm. Now, don't ask Tracy afterwards how she thinks it works, but. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm a second-year MBA. Is this on? Okay. You talked a little bit. Well, you talked a lot about growth, but specifically when you guys are targeting an acquisition, kind of what is the process of that specifically? Because you'd mentioned culture a little bit, so I'd love to hear more of your perspective.
Well, there's two separate entities are going on at the same time, I think. There is culture, okay? There is personnel, okay? So you can have a great culture at a company, but if you and the other owners don't agree, it's not going to work, all right? It's not just agreeing on terms, it's about agreeing what the future is, who the leadership is going to be, all of that. At the same time, Tracy and her team have just an incredible process that they've got in these data rooms. And there are questions, there are financial questions, and you have to bring in outsiders, most of those companies. We'll used to be, we would get to the end of the line and they didn't realize they were going to have to pay tax on selling their company, somebody. It's crazy. But so we have a process that we have developed and a team of people, and that's what they do. They do financials, contracts, leases. It's pretty systemized. Who today was doing, you were going to develop a company for management company? We would probably love some kind of a more streamlined system using AI to determine how to narrow down what somebody's EBITDA really is, okay, and to get their stuff out, because it all has to be done, a lot of it manually today, right? So, so two processes are going on at once, and so at the same time, you're also negotiating, which is the third part in the middle, all right? And you can't have three people negotiating, and so, for us, these are almost always family businesses we buy. And they're family businesses where they have had nobody in their family come in. They haven't wanted anybody in their family to come in. Others have a lot of family members to come in that have quit on their parents, or they have them in really insignificant jobs, which creates a whole other issue. So those are the three levels that you're dealing with: culture, people, and the financials of it. And in the end, have we made mistakes? Sure, we've made mistakes. None of them that are terrible, but we've made mistakes. We also, then you look at their market share. I said this earlier, you have to look at their market share. You have to look at what services they're providing right now, how effective they are. We started our mortgage company in 1982 or 83, I don't think anybody's really sure, but we started it when the rates were 18, 19%, and my father went in and gave money, a pledge account, refinanced his house to say, can you lend us money which we can lend out at 14%? Mm-hmm. And from that came the mortgage company. It came to fill a need. In the late 1990s, all real estate companies had to open a mortgage company because it was a profit center. So to us, the profit center isn't effective unless it helps us sell more real estate, commercial property, land, new construction, unless it helps us do that. So we look at those opportunities within the company also. Mm-hmm. But it's gotten to be a better process, I can guarantee you, than it was. Yes?
Hi, Helen. Gustavo, 2022 MBA graduate. So staying in the topic of culture, as you have an amazing culture, and that's what I see here with the leaders and the interactions between everyone. Through your growth, I know culture is something hard to maintain, something hard to continue and to strive and to maintain all the way to the growth. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you face with culture and how you face those challenges?
I think we all face the same problems with culture today, whether that's the Tepper School of Business, whether it's a startup business, whatever it is. And I think we face that with culture within our own teams. So, because there is so much information out there, so much disinformation, but real information too, that I think it's confusing. So what is your culture? Because today it's all intermixed, what's ever on the internet, what's ever on the air. And so you have to stick to what your values are. And part of the problem is we have so much that we offer at Howard Hanna. I mean, it overwhelms me, our technology platforms. It overwhelms me, our programs to help buyers and sellers. It overwhelms me, the kind of insurance offerings that we have. Like all of those programs. And I look at them, and then we have to decide what to sell or what to market. And we have so much to market that we've got to narrow it down. We've got to have a theme each year. And that theme has to speak to the culture and has to speak to what we are. And actually, so this year it's been before, but we brought it back, which is home happens here, because that is what we do. Everything we do has to deal with the home. But you have to speak the culture in many different ways. So the same messaging has to go out, whether it's being sent out from HR, Meredith Stevenson, she has a newsletter that they send out to employees in the company. All right, that has to speak the same message that we are speaking in the newsletter, which is geared towards saying to our agents, you're doing an absolutely great job and you're in the best in the world. All right? But if the message isn't the same, then we're going to have confusion. Okay? So that's it. Person, one-to-one. And I've said, we are, in the end, a people business. We are not a business that can go get rid of 2,000 people tomorrow and make a difference. All right? We are a business that it is people delivering service to people, no matter how much technology is in the background. I can tell you, in the middle of the night, when you've had a fire, you do not want to talk to somebody who is being generated by AI. You want to talk to a real person who's going to come out there if necessary. So I think that makes the difference. So if the people that are working for you in insurance don't believe in that same culture, they're not going to answer the phone at 3 a.m. or whatever it might be when the problem exists. So we have to be speaking the same culture. We have to speak it on social media. We have to speak it in our marketing internally and externally, and we have to speak it in our actions. And I do think it's something that our company and our family do incredibly well, is speak in our actions what we do. So we mentioned the musical theater, which is my husband's and my personal passion. But we've raised how much total now for children's hospitals everywhere we are?
Oh my goodness, millions.
Yeah, it's like 10 million now. It's like 10. I think we passed $11 million that we've raised over the last number of years. In every market we're in, we support children's free care funds at whatever children's hospitals there are. That's a unifying definition of our culture and what we believe in. We are involved in communities everywhere we are. All right? So you can't go to a community where we don't have people that are engaged in a school board, are engaged in community development, are engaged in the programs to help grow those markets. So I think that speaks to the culture also. And you will see our name a lot of places because we are involved in a lot of places. That's difficult with as many markets as we're in 14 states and God knows how many cities, but that's difficult, but it's important to us that we do that we give back to the community because that speaks of the culture, it speaks of what you believe in.
One last question.
I'll get you. Gustavo, doesn't he have a wonderful name? I
Yeah.
told him that, so I'll get him later.
Hi, Helen. I am Suhas, an information systems grad student from Heinz College across the street. So my question is, the US is in the election year. There are talks of the government pumping cash into the economy, and then some federal rate cuts and all of that. And you have two business entities, one of which looks to seemingly benefit from these things that are happening, and the other, the mortgages, which I may or may not. So what's your outlook on this?
Whoa. That was not on the list of potential questions. I think we are in an interesting time politically, and I think everybody is going to try to offer everything to solve whatever they think is a problem. Again, I would say right now, I don't know that we are addressing the problem federally. I don't know that we are addressing the problem politically. I think we are in an interesting time politically, and I think everybody is going to try to offer everything to solve whatever they think is a problem. Again, I would say right now, I don't know that we are addressing the problem federally. I don't know that we are addressing the problem or state-wise, what the real issue is with housing. Because I've said very clearly, and I think our mortgage team would agree with me, if somebody finds a house today, the rate is not a problem. Okay? If somebody finds a house today, as long as we can get them a mortgage, and and I mentioned this before in my group, United Purpose Mortgage is another company of ours that really caters to specialty mortgages for groups that have not been able to get mortgages before. So, and part of that is a learning curve to them. So everybody's going to address those, but they've got to address the right issues. First-time buyers are not the right issues. It's across the market. Need of housing is across the market. So somebody has to address that. So will we sell more houses this year than last year? Yes, we will sell more houses this year than last year. Some because of those initiatives, but they won't be enough to do that. But prices will still go up because there won't be enough inventory. So, I think regulations are tighter right now than they have been under a previous administration. All right. That is not to say that I like a previous administration, so I want to be careful here. But you have to find that balance always between regulation and laissez-faire government and what is right. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
Great final question. Thank you all for being here, and thank you especially.
Oh, thank you.
Casey. Phenomenal leader. We're lucky to have you in Pittsburgh and here at Carnegie Mellon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.